Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Connections podcast, where we talk about maintaining our relationships on Allah's terms. I'm your host, Fatima Qadri, here with my co-host, Dr. Fariha Khan. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Fariha.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Dr. Fariha, do you think you could tell us a little about the hadith you chose for today's episode? I thought it was a really interesting choice.
Yeah, sure. So this hadith is one of the hadith that's going to be featured on our legacy series, the ongoing series that's on our Instagram page at the Salah Initiative. And I was reflecting on it because I just think that it's so concrete, like it gives really concrete steps on how to do our social lives. And that's just it just stuck out to me because of that. So the hadith goes where Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, he's sitting with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he says, Ya Rasulullah, please inform me of a thing that if I implement it, I'll enter Jannah. He asks, could you tell me about something? If I do it, I'll enter Jannah. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he replies by giving him four things to do. He says, أفش السلام وأطعم الطعام وصل الأرحام وقم بالليل والناس نيام وادخل الجنة بالسلام. So that's أفش السلام is spread the greetings of peace. أطعم الطعام, feed food or feed people, basically. وصل الأرحام, maintain your ties of kinship, يصلة الرحم, and stand in prayer at night while others sleep. قم بالليل والناس نيام, and you'll enter Jannah by doing these four things. And I just thought it was like it's just so systematic and concrete. I mean, we talk a lot about like our social, we're so much on social we're so much on social media and trying to connect with each other through social media, but here we have these recommendations that are very simple and very concrete and very effective. I don't know. I mean, I just felt like it was a real strong juxtaposition against the kind of social lives we live today and our social focus of today, as opposed to what this hadith recommends. Does that make sense? I mean,
Yeah, of course. And like the socialization that the hadith is describing is what all these therapists and all these people are talking about would be the solution to the problems that we're having from overexposure to social media and technology, etc.
what do you mean?
But like spread readings of peace and feeding each other, feeding people.
Therapists talk about that?
No, like of actually having like human interaction. That's what I
Oh,
mean. Like, like not
yeah,
feeding people. But it's like,
right.
I mean, there's a difference between the interaction you have online versus like sitting with somebody and actually like eating with them, saying salam to them, looking at them, being in each other's company in person.
It's very physical.
Yeah,
It's
it's
very
very
physical.
physical.
Even the way of maintaining your kinship, how it's described, wasil is from sila, right? Like the connect. Your arham is what? Your wombs. I mean, the bonds that you have that are established through some kind of a womb connection. And
SubhanAllah.
it's
So
very,
like your cousins, your aunts, of course your siblings, your parents, your
yeah, and
family.
it's like in the hadith, you're going from more, the most basic level of social contact to more and more intense for the first three parts at least, right? So you give salam, and the recommendation among the ulama and the commentators of the hadith, this is uh this is very specifically giving salam to the Muslim, like like to anyone who you come across who is the believer, you give salam. So it's very general. It's like for anyone. And then you go to the next level, which is atim ta'am, which is feeding people, and then you go to your relatives, and so it's like getting more and more intense in what you have to do to, like for the person, and also it's getting closer. So the salam is a wide circle feeding the food is slightly closer to you, and then the الأرحام is like your relatives, like the closest people to you. So it has like this degree of built up in your social interaction.
Oh, well, I didn't realize that until you broke it down that way. Like even though I read this hadith before we began so many times,
Yeah. No,
but
I mean the commentators, I don't think they say it like that it's building, but I feel like it's building. Um, but definitely like when I was reading the commentary on the hadith, they were, it was mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ, through this hadith, is giving like tarbiyah. He's yurabbi, like he's giving tarbiyah to the Muslims on how to be virtuous and have lofty traits so that people in society can become mutually loving and supportive of each other.
subhanAllah. So the beginning part of the hadith that you described is just basic community relations, like saying salam to people at the masjid, saying salam to people the way you interact with them, like responding to them warmly, or is it like deeper than that?
I mean, I think it's a pretty straightforward thing. It's just give salam. There's I noticed sometimes in contemporary translations of this hadith, people will try to say afsha salam means spread peace, like United Nations
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something. Like,
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know, what does that
yeah.
mean? What does it mean to spread peace, right?
Yeah.
It's not spread peace in a generic way, even though it says afsha salam. As-salam here is the greeting, the assalamu alaikum that's being referred to.
I mean, just with interacting with people or like passing people by. I mean, I've been working with all these Muslims. Like, it's amazing what just a simple salam can do to someone's day, or like how much it can light up somebody's face. Even if somebody like doesn't like someone or they don't like get along with someone, just giving that greeting of salam, like how it can bring peace and like into the atmosphere, or it can soften the atmosphere,
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't know
Mm-hmm.
the person that well. Like, like sometimes like we see kids walking down the hallway, they're like, shoulders down, head down, and you're like, Assalamu alaikum. And then like, their head perks up, they look up at you. It's like a beautiful thing, mashallah.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I had some visitors. My sister was visiting with her kids from Chicago, and so we went up to we went to Mecca and I took them to the Ghar Hira, to Jabal Nur and to climb up to the Ghar Hira, and it's like they've redone it so that it's I don't know if have you ever been to the Ghar Hira?
No, not on the hike, but I heard that it's more accessible now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So we've done it multiple times. Before COVID, I had done it multiple times, and then during COVID, I heard they closed it, and I was like really worried about what they were doing to it. I was like, I hope they're not gonna wipe it off anyway. So, but they, mashallah, tabarakallah, it's like really nicely done now. So there's a slow incline path. So it's not as steep like before. It was like basically going straight up from the bottom. Now it's like this at an angle, and so it's easier to start off, and but it's still pretty intense. And you're getting up there, you're really tired, and you get up to the Ghar, and then as I was coming down, there's this, I think he was Turkish. I think he was like a Turkish German guy. He was with his wife and kids, and I noticed him helping this woman who was having a hard time at the steep part. She was afraid to look down and step down, even though it wasn't dangerous by any means, but she was a little bit older, and it was dark at that point, so I think she just was feeling nervous. So he helped her, even though he didn't know this lady. And then we're continuing down the path. There's a cleaning guy. You know how there's like just
Yeah.
the guys that were like sweeping around in the haram. There's people like that on this path too to the Ghar Hira, and he's probably Bengali, and used to sort of being ignored and stuff. And he's sweeping the path, and this guy, he's just like, Assalamu alaikum. And like he just said it so genuinely to this cleaning guy, which it sounds normal enough, but it's not. Like I've been around here enough that I know people really don't pay attention to the cleaning guys, right? And he's like, Assalamu alaikum. He's like, Barakallahu feek, like thanking him for keeping the path clean. And I was like, and the guy, you should have seen his reaction. He was just like, oh, wow, thanks for recognizing my existence. You know what I mean? Like, it was just,
Yeah.
subhanAllah, it was,
Subhanallah, subhanallah.
yeah, yeah,
Like of how you could how can you like walk past each other and not recognize somebody, you know? But we do it all the time. Like and not realize that we're ignoring people in our path.
yeah.
SubhanAllah. That when I married into this family, like my mother-in-law had this rule, and her kids were teenagers at the time. They really disliked the rule, but like I saw the purpose of it. She would like as soon as he came down from for breakfast or for anything, she would say salam, like say salam to everybody in the kitchen or everybody in the room. Like, and
Wow.
you have to stop and say salam. And even if it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she would stop them before they ate or something and say, "Did you say salam? Like, did you not see me standing here and say salam?"
Wow.
But it
Wow,
was
that's
so.
something.
It really was because it would make it would make you acknowledge your family and you start with a greeting before you just like you should be like don't be jungly and just go at the fridge, like say salam. So one time I was listening to this story on NPR, and so
Mm.
my mother-in-law's habit really resonated with me when I heard this story. And so they were interviewing this couple that had been married for 60 years, and it was like a special, like one of those special things on NPR. And they were like, you guys have to tell us your secret of how you've been married this long and you still actually like each other. And so the man said, we had this rule in our marriage that every time we saw each other in the house, we would greet each other. Like we wouldn't just walk past each other, and he didn't say salam, but we wouldn't like not
These were
greet.
Muslims or?
No, they were not Muslim.
Oh,
And so he
mashallah.
would say, and so the couple was like, we attribute the secret to the success of our marriage to the fact that we would never walk past each other in our home and not greet each other or
Mm.
acknowledge each other. I thought about my mother-in-law when I was listening to the story, and I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
this is what
subhanallah.
this is what she was trying to implement in her home, like the recognition of each other in a warm way, in a respectful manner,
Yeah.
and to have like an etiquette even with the people you live with, mashallah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, basically, especially with the people you live with, right? I mean, I
yeah.
think it's part of Muslim practice. I'm not sure if it's part of the Sunnah, but it's definitely part of Muslim practice that when you go in and out of your environment that you say salam, so like I think that's probably why my husband and I do that. I don't know if it was because this is how he was taught, but like when he's waiting in the car for me and I get in the car, we always say salam to each other, even though I just was in the house with him. But
Mm-hmm.
it's and it was really interesting. I was reading this, Sheikh Nu Keller, he writes these letters to prison inmates every month. And one of the letters that he wrote was on the significance of the salam. So like he'll take some kind of a Quranic concept and he'll explain it in each letter. So this one was on giving the salam, and he said in that letter that the salam is actually a form of shafa'ah, you know, the
Oh,
intercession.
mashallah. Yeah,
It,
yeah.
so you're actually every time you give salam to someone, you're making a dua for them, or you're calling on Allah to give them peace or protection, and that's why it's obligatory to, it's not obligatory to give the salam, but it's obligatory to reply because this person has just done shafa for you. Like he's just interceded on behalf of you. You're supposed to like return the favor. And I never realized how big of a thing it was until you put the word shafa'a to it, which is like the daraja of the Prophet ﷺ and what he does for us in the akhirah. And like here's your brother in this world doing it for you right now. I thought it was pretty amazing. But
And then the angels are making dua for you because you just made dua for
yes,
another woman. Subhanallah. We would say like one of the things of bullying prevention in our school could be that every student has to say salam when they pass each other or anybody, because then nobody would feel like ignored or like they're not, like you mentioned the cleaning person on
mm,
the path. And also that even if you had bad feelings or didn't get along with someone, you would put that aside in the moments that you said you greeted each other.
do you think you could actually implement that though?
Yeah, we actually did try it at one of the schools I worked at, we did try it where we had this salam campaign kind of thing where everybody had to say salam when they passed someone, even if it was an upperclassman, a teacher that didn't teach you, because then kids had this idea, you know, like, oh, she's not my teacher, I don't have to say salam. But it was, we were saying no, like, then it's an elder in your building, you have to say salam. Everybody has to say salam to each other. Yeah, it did help a lot. Could we, if I may, ask you about the feeding people in the hadith? So, like feeding miskin, feeding.
Yeah, so it's أطعم, right? So there is a hadith where you're specifically recommended to feed those who are hungry. أطعموا الجائع is the version, that version. But here the command is generic. So it could be feeding for charity, it could be feeding for just for any purpose. It's not just sadaqah, it's just giving food.
So this is really big in Muslim cultures, right? In any Muslim country, like if you go to someone's home, any country where people are predominantly Muslim, you don't leave without eating. Like you have to take like something. Or I remember like when the guests would come to our home, like the older generation, they would never let anybody leave until they served them something from their home to eat.
I think it's not as easy though nowadays for people to feed food,
Yeah.
because generally the people who are doing the cooking and stuff are the women. I mean, remember that incident from, I think it was the Battle of the Trench, where the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, one of the Sahaba's home was near there in Medina, and so he had some food and he prepared it with his wife, and then he invited the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and a couple of people to please come and eat. And the Prophet ﷺ said, announced to the whole army, we're going to his house for food.
Yeah,
and he
mashallah.
and he
I
ran
always
to
think
his
about that
wife.
story when I'm cooking and I'm afraid the food's running out.
Yeah.
I imagine that moment.
Yeah, and he ran to his wife, right? She was the one doing the cooking. It's her at home. And the Prophet coming with the whole army, sallallahu. So, and alhamdulillah, I mean the food was sufficient for the entire army. But the point is, if we don't have women at home doing the cooking, able to do the cooking, then I think it's harder to follow this aspect.
Yeah, it definitely puts a damper on things. Like like in order for a family to stay together and to meet frequently or to maintain relations, like somebody has to be bringing it together behind the scenes always.
And also have the the fursa, like the free time to be able to, because I mean this is intense. I remember when I was living out in the Pacific Northwest, out in Washington State, Oregon, that area, my husband's boss at the hospital, his wife, she's Christian, like a religious Christian woman, and she'd come to visit me. And I don't remember what I'd fed her. I'm sure I fed her a bunch of stuff because that's normal, right? She was just like very, I don't remember if she was impressed, but I remember she had commented on what we were eating as like more than usual or something like that. And, and one of the things we started talking about was how there's less social connections because women are just not able to to implement that role of being the social glue and just like looking out for each other and like having people over and feeding them, because they don't have the time.
Yeah, or sometimes like you might have the time, but it can be daunting, right? If it's not something that you grew up doing or you feel equipped to do. Like,
Yeah.
how am I supposed to put together a meal for 10 people? Or how am I go to, I mean, I seldom I'm invited to a home where the dinner is going to be homemade, most of the time it's catered, which is still very generous and kind because it's like you're still spending on your guest. But it's just, I guess it's like something that a skill that we need to value and we need to like uphold or carry on.
What do you think about the catering the food rather than cooking it?
I mean, I'm always excited when it's homemade, even if it's not good. Like even if somebody doesn't know how to cook
Even
well.
if it's not good, you were about to say.
Yeah, even if it's not good. Like even if you're not a good cook, like homemade is homemade. Like
Right.
I'm not. I happen to have a sensitive stomach, so for me, homemade is gold. But I have a friend, she's from Turkey, and she was saying she moved here from Turkey, so we went to her house and she made all this food, and we're like, oh, mashallah, you cooked at home, and all of us were like, you cooked all this at home from scratch too. And she was like, oh, in my country, like, we don't, if we don't like someone that much, we order out. And so she was
Um,
saying, like, when I came to America, like, I felt like nobody liked me because every time I went to someone's home, I was eating restaurant food, and
oh wow.
I felt like they weren't accepting me because maybe I'm an outsider. And then so we were telling her, like, no, 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 no. It's because nobody, it's very, it's hard for people to cook. Like, they don't always know how to cook, and they don't want to, like, serve you food that they're not confident about. So they order in. And but some cultures are still upholding that. Like a lot of cultures still pride
Yeah.
themselves in cooking for their guests.
I
So
wonder if it's also like maybe it's an issue of time management. Like maybe we can do things. Well, there's actually so many issues. So I mean, it depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about serving in general, I think the catering thing is a good thing. I don't think it's necessarily
yeah,
bad if that's the only way you can have people
yeah, you're
over.
you're still spending a lot on your guest, and it's an act of love. But also, like, I think more so it's an issue of just kind of growing up with it. Like, if the people who feel comfortable with it, they've had exposure to it, right? Like, when you're, like, young, your mom is hosting and you're helping, you're cleaning, you're tending to your guests, you're learning in her shadow. Boys and girls are learning their parents' shadow. But
You know what would compromise? I mean, I agree with you because I was like that. I grew up in a house where we were constantly serving people too, just like I know that's the case with you. Um, and so it's really normal, to the point where it's like my mom, if anyone would come over, she would just it wouldn't have to be biryani or something. She would just like feed them rice and dal and whatever's like cooked.
yeah,
And people would love my mom's dal. They were just like, "Oh, Adi Papa, your khatti dal is the best, right? Like your Hyderabadi
yeah,
dal is like the best." And I would actually, I mean, we would enjoy that more than if I were to go to someone's house and they just fed me whatever regular stuff they've cooked. I would enjoy that more than if they fancy catered me from the restaurant. But like, what was I gonna say? Um,
simplicity. Yeah, this is simplicity of hosting. You were saying, like, of your mom.
exposure.
Yeah,
Like
exposure.
just having seen that, I think it's just normal. Oh no, this is what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, like with we had to be present.
Yeah,
When all this was happening as kids, like when
yeah.
my mom is cooking and serving, and my parents are sitting with people, we had to be sitting with there too. We had to be helping. We had to do stuff. I notice nowadays a lot of gatherings are just adult only. Even small gatherings at home often.
Yeah.
Does that what you've seen
Yeah,
too? Or
yes, I am seeing. Like, I don't remember. I mean, just I mean, before I respond to that, like, I just wanted to point out that my mom hosted a lot, but she hosted very simple. She never
Mhm.
made 7, 8 dishes. She made one dish, two
You
dish.
kidding?
Yeah, she did not make a lot of dishes. Like,
Like what kind of
and
dishes?
she didn't feel bad about it. No matter if even if like I have to say, like, one thing I really admired about her was she really hosted for the intention of, like, of what is mentioned in this hadith. Like, it wasn't like, if even if we went to someone's house and they had 10 dishes, my mom
Mhm.
wouldn't feel shy to host the same person on 2 dishes,
That's
because
amazing.
yeah, because it was, she
That's so
didn't,
your mom though, mashallah,
yeah, didn't
tabarakallah.
feel bad. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off hosting, is when
Yeah,
your intention is for Allah. Your intention is not to impress people or to live up to a standard. Your intention is really for Allah, and Allah knows what you can afford. He knows what you're capable of. He knows your intention is sincere. Then she would say, make I'll teach you guys biryani, make one dish, have one dish parties. It's not a big deal.
wait, so
But
if when your mom would make it simple, what would she serve? Like
she
what
would
kinds of things?
she'd make biryani,
Hmm.
which is like a one
But
hit
that
wonder
counts as like
desi dish.
fancy food though.
But it's easy to make, if it's
You
easy to make
pre
once you learn it. Yeah.
hmm
And
hmm
it's like one big protein,
Right.
and then it has like a yogurt on the side. And if it's like maybe a fancier occasion or something, then she would add, like, chicken, because not everybody eats lamb. But my point is, like, she didn't feel like the pressure to have, like, multiple dishes, and if one day the food didn't turn out perfect, she wouldn't beat herself up over it. Like if you add too much pressure to yourself, then
Mm.
you can't maintain hosting. There's no way.
Mm-hmm.
If you're like, oh, my house has to be immaculate if somebody stops by,
Mm-hmm.
we can't live up to that level of pressure. We're human. Perhaps that was also one way to maintain it. But yeah, like if somebody was coming over, everybody had to be present. You can't sit in your room. You have to sit with your aunts and uncles. And if anything, we would just listen to their conversations. And we got such a kick out of just sitting and listening to them that we still
Right?
love it right now. We have
Yeah.
more fun with them sometimes, like the elders.
And
Um,
subhanAllah, I mean, like what you just described, you basically did all three of the first parts of the hadith. Like if the kid is sitting there with the family, you've done your afsha salam, you've done your feeding of the ta'am, and then you've done the connecting of the arham, the connecting of your family ties. It's like, you know, so you got major tarbiyah right there from your family. If this is what, if this is what we grew up with, we've gotten all of those things. But nowadays, like I won't even see my friends' children. Like before they would come down and they would give salam and stuff, and now it's like even that's not necessarily expected. They don't have to come and give salam anymore.
or be
They're
home
there.
even. Yeah.
Yeah, they're home, even they're home and they're not expected to come down. If they happen to come down to get something from the kitchen, oh, assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah, at least they do
Yeah.
that, alhamdulillah.
No, but the older generation, like, I mean, our parents' generation that first came to this country, like, it was unfathomable that you would be having guests and your children would not be home. Like, you couldn't just say, "Oh
Oh, you
yeah,
mean what do you
I
mean
have."
they're not home?
Like, you
What if
couldn't
they're
be
at
like,
school?
no, I mean, like, let's just say it's an evening. You couldn't be
Hmm.
16 and say, "Oh, I have plans with my friends," and like, you're like laughing when I'm saying it because it's unfathomable.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like, I think that
What's plans with your friends? Like there's no such thing. You're home today because people are coming over.
but we're our generation, like we're not like that with our kids. Like we're like, oh, she had this thing planned like a long time ago, or something like that. Like would be like, oh, I told her she can go with her friends, but then
Do
how
you
will
think we
our
need to
kids
be more
learn?
intention? Do you think we need to be more intentional in like having our family members present, like our kids present and stuff?
Yeah, and inclusive, right? It's almost like, I mean, if you go up to your kid and say, so and so's coming to dinner today, and this is how we know them, and this is how we're related to them, or etc. And I would like you to help with X, Y, and Z, and sit with the guest. Maybe a typical teenage reaction will be like, "Oh, come on, do I have to? Like, I don't want to, etc., etc." But when the expectation is clear, they're gonna benefit from it. Thank you later. Thank you many years later. We did.
I
Me and
wonder
my
if it
cousin.
also.
Yeah.
Oh,
Huh?
what? What were you saying?
No, I was saying um my girl cousins and I, like, the things that we really annoyed us when we were growing up, we now thank our moms for.
Yeah.
And genuinely thank them, like, oh, thanks for teaching me how to make biryani for 50 people, etc.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like you and I are sort of unusual in that we grew up in Chicago, in America, but we had all our khandan, like our whole family there
Yeah.
with us growing up in the 70s, 80s and stuff like that. So, I mean, uh, I don't know, I
Yeah,
probably a lot of my
everybody.
friends didn't necessarily have it like that.
So I have a
Mm.
friend in Houston, and
Mhm.
mashallah, like she's known. She has this reputation amongst all of her friends. She doesn't have it. She lives in Houston by herself, so her husband's family and her family are not there, and her husband works out there. So we actually stopped
Wait,
by.
sorry, you said she lives in Houston by herself without her family. Is that what you said?
Yeah, without both of
Mhm.
their family. Her and
Oh,
her husband family
mm-hmm,
don't live there,
mm-hmm.
and but they're there. Her husband works out there. But mashallah, so she has 5 kids, and we went to visit her when we went. And because we were travelers, I was in a group of like 4 families traveling together. She invited all of us, and then she invited her Muslim neighbors,
Wow.
and she said, I thought it would be nice for you to meet my community and meet my neighbors.
Wow.
And like she just hosted this whole like big dinner. She made everything at home. She did all this stuff, and she cooked whatever came to her mind. But like her kids were present the whole time. They were greeting all the guests. They were welcoming people, and she had tasks for them to do, like, oh, go get your toys, or walk them to the park, show them where the park is. I mean, they were involved in the whole process, and so what, like, what she didn't have kin there, but she maintained these friendships with other Muslim families,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and you would think that they were their khandan. And I thought that was a really beautiful thing, because unfortunately, like, sometimes people are like, oh, well, I don't really know them. I don't want to meet anybody new. It's like, can't it just be our friends group, etc. But she was like, no, like, welcome to my town, and here are my neighbors, and here are my friends from Chicago, etc.
Yeah, even though you might think, well, that's a different circle and this is a different circle, and there's no benefit in putting them together,
Yeah,
but she's actually just having a nia of bringing people together and feeding
yeah.
them.
And she
Mm.
played that active role, like, oh, introducing us to each other, having us all at the same table, etc.
There's also like this networking kind of element that people think about nowadays.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, bring them together because it would probably be beneficial for her to meet so and so. And I wonder if that is that something that we should, I don't know what it just comes to mind. I don't know. Mm.
Well, I mean, I live in a neighborhood with a lot of people do live here, and they don't have family. And one of the things that really affects a lot of the women at home is the loneliness, and, like, wanting to, they miss their families back home.
Mm.
They, they're alone. And so I have had a few dinners, like, in that way. Or,
Mm.
like, we have a huge refugee population in Chicago, and they would say, like, the hardest thing for them was just, they said, more than money, more than support, we just need friendship. We need community, people to talk to and have tea with, and, share things with.
But that's kind of also the problem with big metropolises like Chicago and stuff where you come and there are so many people around that you could potentially connect with, but it's so vast that just like um doing that is not always easy. I found a lot of people when they say when we heard so much about Chicago being a nice place for Muslims to live in, and we moved there and we were so lonely. And people just had their own little circles of their families. They've been there for a really long time and they have their own thing going. And we had a hard time getting in to any circle.
Uh, but
So
this
I
is
mean,
a.
look, what you're
Mhm.
saying about inviting your neighbors and like including them in things, I think it's really huge, pondering that. Yeah.
And, like, especially if like, someone's gonna be alone on Eid, like, they don't have,
Yeah.
like, grandparents to go visit. They'll give their kids Eid and things like that. And, like, we have to have, like, a more openness to our gatherings, where they can't just be exclusively our family or exclusively our friends.
Mm-hmm. So I remember because I moved around after I got married a lot in America. So I was in towns where it wasn't as super Muslim presence as it was in Chicago. And I noticed in these places there would often be like one family who would take on the role of being the connectors. And so their house would be, I remember I'm thinking one particular family in the Portland, Oregon area, they would have their house would be like the Eid open house. If you didn't have anywhere else to go on Eid, you knew you could go to the auntie's house for Eid. And then same thing I noticed in Michigan too. There was a family, they would always have lots and lots and lots of people coming from the masjid. Anyone they would see at the Eid namaz who they felt was maybe not didn't have anywhere to go, they would just have them come over right after Eid Salah. And I think it's really phenomenal that there were such people doing these things.
It's usually managed by somebody behind the scenes who's willing to put in the work and the time
Mm-hmm.
to make it happen. It's not easy, right? To be the host and to welcome everybody.
Good enough. I mean, I thought it was also interesting how in this hadith, it's all like social stuff. There's 4 points in the hadith, and they're all social things, except for the last one. And I was like, well, this kind of everything else was about do this for people and do this for people and do this for people. And then there's you standing alone at night, you know?
Yeah.
And did you notice that as well?
Yes. Yes. But for myself personally, I saw a very distinct connection
How?
in understanding it because one, like your intention is for Allah for all of these things.
Mm.
And so then how could you not be spending time alone with Allah?
You mean like all
Yeah.
of these things are connecting to someone, and here you're connecting to
Yeah.
Allah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
wow, I
Like
didn't think of
you're
it that
connecting with
way.
all of these people and spending time
Mm.
with them. Like how could you not cut time out just privately between you and your creator?
Yeah, mashallah. Oh, that's really nice, mashallah. I mean, I just what it made me think of was when we talk a lot about having needing personal time and needing time to yourself and honoring your own s- giving yourself your own space and nurturing yourself. And it's like from this hadith, it just made me feel like it's not like a new thing that we do need time to ourselves, but not in a selfish way of just like it's just for me, but it should be you connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that there's a role of having personal time, but that personal time is still directed towards something beyond yourself.
Like too much socializing also though like depletes you and
Mm-hmm.
you lose your it's easy to lose your purpose when you're just
Mashallah.
socializing with the same people again and again. It's just for your own amusement, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
Whereas
like
if
I know
you
I
yeah.
whereas what?
Then like whereas if your intention is for Allah, then you'll have a more of an open heart to like and invite new people, meet new people. But like,
No, but you mentioned depletion, so this kind of recharges you in a way,
yeah,
so that
yeah,
you can sort of have enough within you to give again. But I
yeah,
mean, it's not even just socialization, even just like I hear from moms who have little babies who where they'll just be like, I just feel so overwhelmed. Like I'm constantly this baby's like attached to me, literally physically, at her breast, like
yeah,
and she just and they'll say I need some time. I need some time to myself or some a break or a personal time. And I just felt like this hadith sort of supports you in that, but in a way that doesn't let it become a selfish endeavor. Like it's something that is still directed at toward a higher way of doing it, so that it is
whereas
it.
like it's like time with Allah versus me time, or like
Mm-hmm.
like self care, which is I mean the elements of that are important. But yeah, I remember when I was like a new mom, like, and I was just sitting in a gathering with Sheikh Nu was speaking, and somebody asked like, what should a very tired and frustrated, exhausted mom do to like relax herself and just have some like relaxation time for themselves. And he said, go to a hadra. And I was like, I remember sitting there as a new, tired, frustrated mom, and I was like, he's saying go to a dhikr? Like, he's like, I thought he was, in my mind, I was thinking he was going to say something like, pamper yourself or something, like, I don't know why or what I was thinking that, but then later when
Mm.
I thought about it, I was like, subhanAllah, like, that's what he was describing. Like, this is how you will feel. And that's exactly how you feel after those gatherings, extremely, like, replenished and energized.
SubhanAllah. Yeah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us. I mean, I just thought it would be useful to reflect on this hadith because it's just really concrete. And, I look at myself and I look at people around me and how there's a lot of forces in society that are basically pushing us to be by ourselves. Even though we talk a lot about connecting and we talk a lot about making contacts and having likes and friends and whatever. But I just feel like I know the loneliness is increasing. I think we don't really have the skills to be able to come out of that loneliness. We don't really know we're lonely and we don't really know what to do about it. We don't like that we're lonely, but we don't know what to do about it. Um, And this is just a really simple, easy roadmap. Like, listen, you're lonely, you want to make connections, say salam, right? You're lonely, you have a neighbor, you see somebody who looks decent, just tell them, why don't you come over and have some dal chawal, like have some rice or like some whatever you have at home, just feed. And you have some relatives, like you have siblings, you haven't seen them in a couple of months, like have them over for dinner, have them over for dinner at once. And it's really concrete. It sounds so simple, I think, to people who've seen this a lot growing up, but I think for someone who doesn't have this in their life as normal practices, like normally just giving a greeting to someone, and do it because you're supposed to. That in itself is like, I feel like it might be so helpful because you want to connect, but you don't have the social permission to. And here it's like, it's having a command just tells you, okay, I have to do it, just do it. It forces you to do it.
And the obedience is what puts barakah in it.
And the obedience is what puts barakah in it. Yeah, because with obedience, there's always intention.
Yeah.
Subhanallah, mashallah. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate you speaking with me about the hadith today.
Yes, alhamdulillah. This I see this hadith this hadith is useful. The hadith is like a checklist of the things that you need to be doing in your life with intention.
Yeah.
Correct yourself. Like, do I say salam? Do I feed people? Do I maintain ties? And do I spend private time in worship with Allah?
That's a checklist.
Yeah, it's a checklist.
May Allah help us check off the list. Ameen. Rabbil Alameen.
Thank you for joining us today on the Connections podcast. To stay updated on the work we do at the Silla Initiative, sign up for our newsletter at the bottom of our homepage at thesillainitiative.org. You can also subscribe to our channel on YouTube and Telegram, or follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.